When you think about the word brand, brand, brand means belief, right? So much like beauty, right? If you're following that, like, okay, your personal brand is the belief that someone else has about you. Talk to us a little bit about, like, practically what has that looked like? Because I feel like there's all this advice out there around networking and building relationships.
Yes.
Talk to us.
So there is something different about transactional networking and true relationship building. Mm-hmm. And so I advise mentees, young professionals all the time, if you go to a networking event and you've got a pocket full of business cards, your objective is not to scatter as many business cards in the room as possible. If I walk away making a deep connection with one individual, that now I have a follow-up purpose and a reason to reach out and maybe grab coffee or something afterwards, it's a much more successful interaction than shaking hands and the surface level networking that takes place. And I think you show up to serve, you show up to be interested versus interesting. Mm-hmm. So you ask probing questions. Who are you? Why are you here? How can I help? And that natural reciprocity that's wired into every human. If I do something for you, then they're obligated to return the favor. If I invite my neighbor to dinner, they're thinking about when am I going to invite the Allens over. That creates a relationship that goes beyond a single transaction, and you start to build true friendships and relationships of value.
Yeah, in scenarios like that where you go to meetups, you go to networking events, mm-hmm. and you show up to serve, you have that deep connection. For many of us, we drop off in the follow-up. So talk to us about how do you follow up to, like, maintain that deep connection? Yeah,
I mean, so two things. If you didn't enjoy the conversation, there's no need to follow up. Yeah. But if there was a connection that you enjoyed, or say it's someone that you're interested in getting to know because they may potentially be a mentor, a very quick thank you is always appreciated. And in the current day of text and everything's digital, a handwritten note actually goes a long, long way. And so send that. I think even if you haven't had many interactions with an individual, but you came across someone and then you noticed their face in the business journal, you're like, oh, I saw them at that event. Mm-hmm. The business journal, almost every time they profile an executive, includes an email address or LinkedIn profile or Instagram. Shoot them a note and say, oh, it was great running into you that night. And those touches accumulate over time.
Yeah. Then say you step out and say, okay, I really want to own my personal brand. What advice would you give the woman who is noticing that, like, maybe the me that's showing up in my corporate organization isn't exactly the me that's going to resonate with an audience because it's not really me?
Right.
How do you get to that authenticity?
Oh, man. I have seen that time and time again, because I will have people who are coming into my program wanting to build a personal brand and build a business around their brand. And we have to break down what their true voice is. And I'm like, you're so tight and stuffy. Like, we got to break this down. You know what I mean? And, a lot of people come in and they're whitewashing, and I'm like, just be you. And I can understand, of course, why they do it, right? Mm-hmm. They're in survival mode. They're trying to protect their image so they don't lose out on a good paying job. But I'm like, when you decide to build your own personal brand in the entrepreneurial space, you can literally be whoever you want to be. Mm-hmm. And so I just encourage you, it's a practice, something that you have to say, who do I want to be? Journal about it, write it down, and try it and test it. Mm-hmm. And it really, truly can be scary. We're so used to wearing a mask that, even when we go on social media, the mask is on. If I were to say, if you could take this mask off and attract people who truly vibed with you and loved your message for who you were, wouldn't that feel so good and freeing? You know, even for me, like being in a space of, you know, working with Christian women and working with, you know, women of faith, there's a persona that I can put on of like, I'm going to wear a turtleneck all the time and I'm going to wear skirts down to my ankles. But like, for those of you who know my brand, like modesty is not my ministry. It's just not. You're getting abs or you're getting thighs. You know what I mean? I don't work out 5 days a week to be modest. I'm sorry. So, but there's people that it will offend, and then there's people that will attract. And so one of the most important things that you do also have to understand about building a personal brand is that you want to repel people just the same way you want to attract people, because attracting the wrong people can cost you time, money, energy. It can cost you your confidence, because you will have voices of people telling you still how you should be. And we don't step outside of corporate to build a brand where people are still telling us who we should be. So make sure that you are okay with repelling the wrong people, and look at the people you're repelling. If somebody comes to me and they're like, Maya, you shouldn't be twerking and you shouldn't be wearing that, and I go on their page and they're super legalistic and the clothes they're wearing are out of alignment with me, I'm like, yes, don't need you in any of my programs, any of my events, because you would make me and my community uncomfortable. So be okay with repelling the wrong people. Thriving to me means, I think of like joy and fulfillment and expansion, but not in the way of just elevation. Like recently I've been in a season where I'm like, oh, if my company doesn't make more money year after year, do I still feel fulfilled? So expansion, like horizontal, like if I stay the same like monetarily, can I still invite more joy and fulfillment into my life? So just a good alignment of like healthy relationships, money, of course, the money is still important, and overall fulfillment.
I think that we rely too much on social. I think the analogy I always give is like dating. Like when someone asks for your Instagram, they're not going to talk to you again, ever, because they're not going to find you. They're literally not going to see your profile. The same thing happens on LinkedIn. They're not going to find you. They're going to follow I think on LinkedIn, I probably have over 10, 11,000 people on there. Like, I'm not going to see you. So you giving me your LinkedIn really isn't going to do anything for me, because I'm going to forget. I need to screenshot it. I need to add it to my calendar. I need to put you in another document. You have to be intentional, because otherwise they're just going to go into the abyss, because they're not going to come up on Instagram. They're not going to come up on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform it is. Those are great, I think, for quick touch points, but not intentional outreach to really say you have a vested relationship with this human being.
Most of the organizations that I spend time with are all encouraging people to bring their authentic selves into the environment. And that's going to mean that they're going to have to, be flexible and tolerate if people have other aspirations. And what I say to people who have other aspirations is you just have to be clear about your decision at the outset around the priorities. And if your corporate, your corporate opportunity is going to be the main priority, then you know that you're going to have to make some compromises around the other thing. And I'll give you a personal example. I've always loved to sing. And, I knew that at some point I was going to sing in some kind of professional or semi-professional environment. But I also knew that Morgan Stanley was my top number one priority. That was my career. That's where I wanted to excel. And in investment banking, again, I came from the mentality of starting this business in the late 80s. The answer is jump. The question is jump. How high is my answer, right? And I also always knew that the clients had priorities. So what did that mean for Carla the singer? That meant Carla the singer could not make the decision to be a touring professional, because I can't be in Kansas City doing a major concert when I'm supposed to be pricing a transaction. Not going to happen. And you can't be in a position as a singer to tell somebody I can't show up for that concert if you've made the commitment. So that meant that if I wanted to sing, I had to think about singing in a different level. I had to think about, singing and in a local choir, or in my church, or to do concerts or performances that were local or in the tri-state area. And that was a decision I was willing to make, because it still fulfilled me as a singer, still allowed me to do what I wanted to do, but it didn't allow me to be, an A-grade touring professional like a Beyonce or Aretha Franklin or somebody like that.
Sure.
So I say to people, if you have things that you really care about, there's always a way to do them, but you got to think about how you do them in the context of the priority.